What's up, everyone? Me and Joe here, kind of half watching the Chiefs Ravens. Football is back, Joe. Is that not just the greatest news ever?
I think coming off of the games that our college teams had, I think we're definitely feeling good. And
Yeah.
We'll see about our pro teams.
Well, I'd say Falcons
a
were
little
in
more
that,
skepticism
honeymoon
there,
in
but
about 5 seconds. I've already seen reports that Wilson is doing like a hammy or something, and I do not want to play Fields. Do not. I think it's much more likely they beat us with Fields than Wilson, and I just know it's going to be like Alabama all over again when we dominated Jalen Hurts. Then Nick Saban with his giant balls was like, well, I'll just put in this freshman kid. Screw you guys. Again, welcome to be an Atlanta, Georgia fan. But we're excited to be back. We're going to be recording the episodes on Fantasy Six Pack through at least the time change. And to be honest, depending if people don't really care if it's live or not, we may end up just recording them all the way. But Joseph on that West Coast time, he's West Side. So, he's teaching the youth of America. Give him a break.
That's right.
We have, had a lot of time. We've already done 2 shows on Fantasy and Frames over the week 1 slate. I do want to say, because we're going to concentrate on cash games, and I know you agree with me on this, that I say this over, and I know I sound like a broken record, but play cash games. Like, I understand the appeal of seeing these, monster contests where for $5 you can win like $1 million. It's like playing the lottery. And unless you're doing like max or near max entries, which most of these are 150, you're really like, what is it? A legless man in an ass kicking contest, Joe. You know what I mean? Like you're fighting an uphill battle. I don't have the discipline to do just 50-50s, but I really think if I wanted to make
me either.
The most money possible, that's the way to do it, because you only have to beat 51% of the field. But like last year, I got really hot at the end of the year in single entries, won a few $1,000s, and I'm good with that. Like to me, obviously would I like to win more, of course, but I just think if you really want to win money and have a good chance to do it, staying in the cash side, single entries is the way to go, right?
Yeah, I think, it's not exciting, which is kind of why a lot of people don't do it. It's why
Joe, and I won like 4,000 2 weeks in a row is pretty exciting.
That's true. I like if you have enough money to get into those larger pots, it gets a little more exciting. If you're like me and you're like, $20 is probably my max, then it's not as exciting to be in some of the smaller ones, especially 50-50s. I mean, you look at like some of these other ones and you're like, oh man, I could put in $5 and win $2,000 or $500 and win $20,000.
Yep.
And then it's like, or I could double my money, and like that just doesn't sound as appealing. But then, if you, like you said, it's just like be smarter than 51% of people and you make money versus, to win that big money, you got to be smarter than 98% of people.
Those are good gambling odds, right? Like if you're getting, even odds in an NFL wager, that's pretty good, right? And
odds is so much of it because it's like, I don't know if you watch Industry on HBO.
I don't, but I heard it's great.
You should watch it. They just had this episode that followed one character, and he goes on kind of this gambling bender type deal where he wins a ton of money on blackjack.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, wow, like good night for this guy. He goes to the club, gets beat up there, comes back, gets his chips back, and you're like, oh, he's going to blow it. And then you realize he's at a roulette table now.
Oh,
and you're like, it's guaranteed he will blow this money now. Because he's not like roulette. Obviously, like you can kind of get that 50-50 there. But again, roulette's like, that's not what you want to do. Stick to blackjack, stick to craps, guys. If you're ever at the casinos, don't do the other stuff. Yeah, if you're good at poker, do poker.
That's how you're not playing against the house there. You're actually literally playing it. They're making their money no matter what.
Right. That's more the 50-50 where it's just like be better than the guy next to you.
Yep.
So, it's just common sense. It's so hard to stick to in gambling because you get drawn in by those bigger numbers, but that's where it's at.
The American dream, Joe. We all want to be rich and not do anything to get there. So, what we're done with our PSA, but very excited to be doing this again. This is year 4 for us, right?
That sounds right.
Man.
Because what? Or is it year 5?
It might be year 5. Because I think we actually started at the end of that first year, and I think this is 4 full years. So,
because I was gonna say I think we were in the middle of the pandemic, and you were like, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And I was like, "I'm literally doing nothing.
We have nothing to do." So I'm very excited. I'm going to be talking to Doc A tomorrow, going on his podcast, and he said that part of it is wants to know how we got into this, and I'm like, COVID. I was really bored, and I like to talk a lot, and my wife was like, "Shut the fuck up." So. We're going to get into week 1. Again, we're going to concentrate on cash. If you want to do MME, we're going to do a show on Fantasy Frames Friday where we'll concentrate on that. And then Chris Robin, who is great at this stuff, he's actually going to join us most Thursdays. He obviously will have a lot of MME stuff on Sunday on the morning show. But the QB, when we first met, Joe, I was all about Josh Allen. I still think it's a very safe play. Like if you're talking about for cash, getting 3 times, the Arizona's defense awful. Allen 27 points per game in the 9 games that Brady was calling plays. 25 touchdowns in those 9 games. I think people forget, and that was with little involvement from Diggs. So I don't think it's that big of a loss. Then you got Stroud, who the Colts run the most cover 3 in the NFL by a significant margin, like at 55%. CJ Stroud is a rookie. Had the best QBR and numbers versus a cover 3. And then, oh, by the way, his boy Nico Collins is 3rd in yards per route run versus cover 3. And I went back and looked in the 2 Colts games. He had like almost 70 points on DraftKings and like 360 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns. So,
if I'm remembering right, Cleveland is also a very heavy cover.
They are. Yep.
As well. And
we remember what happened.
Okay. And that's with just Nico. That's Tank Dell's out for the year. Stephon Diggs is not there yet.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think also if you just look at, again, one of the very basic things to do is just look at the over-unders. And Texans-Colts is 49 points.
Yeah.
So.
Do you agree with me? You got to wait on Richardson. I want to see something from him. Like there's certain guys like the first week I want to see something from, especially it's DFS. You don't have to play anybody. You know what I mean? It's not like you drafted the guy. I want to see something. He's played 2 games. I think that's fair, right?
I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, it's worth, 3 of the games that he played the majority of the snaps in. He's scored 20 plus, and one of them was a 30 spot. So there's
one of them
value there.
So
right. And then also, if we're assuming that Houston will have success offensively, that's more Richardson dropbacks. That's less Jonathan Taylor. Obviously, Richardson, because of his rushing ability, any game situation could be okay for him. But yeah, the fact that you're leaning away probably from Taylor, I think that's a little more inviting. I mean, when you look at him and Jaden Daniels, who are 2 guys who I don't think you'd be surprised if they put up 30 week 1, and they're at low prices that maybe are the lowest they'll be at all year.
Daniels is 700 cheaper. That's part of the reason why, I'm going to wait and see on Rich. I'd much rather take the shot with Daniels. Honestly, in a better matchup too. Texans defense is they got pretty good by the end of the year. They got talent. I mean, you look at Tampa's defense. I know you feel more highly about it than I do. I'm looking at it from a fantasy perspective. It would not surprise me if Daniels is sacked 5 times and throws 2 picks, but it also wouldn't surprise me if he runs for 200 yards and throws 3 touchdowns.
My thing is with Houston, Houston, you look at it, it says 28th against quarterbacks, and you're like, ooh, this is a prime matchup. But you're right. That defense got better as they went. Now you're in year 2. With Tampa Bay, I wouldn't project long term. I wouldn't be like, oh, Tampa Bay defense is gonna be better than Houston's. My thing is more, where have we really seen Tampa Bay succeed against good offenses or
Jalen Hurts, et cetera. Yeah.
Right. It's Jalen Hurts twice. Granted, last year they're falling apart by the end. So maybe we don't count that. But again, we've seen him twice against a quarterback who had some limitations as a passer. And yes, Jaden Daniels is a much better prospect coming out than Jalen Hurts was. But Jalen Hurts year 2 or Jalen Hurts year 4, I don't think he's a more advanced passer than Jalen Hurts. He also does not have A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. I just don't like the Cliff Kingsbury OC hire.
How dare you slander Terry McLaurin like that? That is my guy.
I'm forgetting who tweeted this out, but it was like, here's where Terry McLaurin has lined up in his 11 snaps in this like preseason game.
Right.
And it was like the same spot every time.
Oh,
it was like not moving him around. And so that's the stuff where I'm just like, like, again, it might not matter. Jaden Daniels could run 80-yard touchdown the second.
I thought you were going to do the old school Family Guy there.
Matter.
No, I get that. I mean, so how about
that's what scares me there. That's what's the value is there. And listen, like the guys whose rankings I check like every week, they all are like Jaden Daniels is a top 10 play. And to your point, he's 5,600. What a value.
I have him in almost every line.
Like my gut is just like, don't do it. So I could be totally wrong. Smarter people than me are saying do it. You're at least as smart as me. You're saying
I don't know about that. I just like that. Again, from what I've heard, he is closer to Lamar, they think, even at the NFL level running. Than any of those guys.
Speed is
like he's actually a
phenomenal.
Good, like Vic, I mean, it's not just that he can run. He's like a good runner. As long as he doesn't get killed.
That's obviously the larger concern.
So
that's more of a season-long concern. So
exactly. So the two players that I keep circling back to, especially for like if you're thinking MME or even in some cash games, are right underneath it. And it's Baker and Geno.
Yes, 100%.
So Washington was awful. We know that. They were like, I think, last versus pass and passing yards. They gave up the most touchdowns.
Terrible.
But Denver was really bad too, like real bad.
Right. You don't think about it because we all are like, oh, they have the best corner in the NFL. And you're like,
that's their only good defender. That is literally because of their Russell Wilson
everywhere
trade.
Else.
That's it. That's all they got. Like, that's it. I mean, seriously, I was reading an article
everywhere
today.
Else throw.
They had to, Simmons had to go. And again, they're paying the punishment for the Wilson trade, both in cap space and in assets. And obviously they address the offense in the draft, taking both Bo Nix and Franklin. And I think the offense is going to be good. Sean Payton's a great coach, but I love everything about Seattle. Kevin Tompkins is slowly just completely converted me to I'm a true believer. The OC, right, from Washington, they're going to run a quicker pace. They had a nightmare year from an offensive line standpoint. Like, it was unbelievable the amount of injuries they had. And I mean, like, I went and looked at Geno's full numbers. He was top 12 in the NFL in QBR and EPA, despite that mess. He had the 33rd best protection rate. It's never good when there's more teams or you're outside of, how many teams there are in the NFL for something like that. And the other thing is both of those guys are at home too. And I think both of their opponents are going to be frisky on offense. So, like, I could see either one of those games becoming kind of a sneaky shootout, and they're actually technically a little cheaper than Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I'm with you on this. Again, I think that Washington defense, they were atrocious last year. Obviously, at least over the course of the season, I expect them to improve.
Yeah.
But again, you hire a head coach and you're like, oh, he's a defensive head coach. Dallas has been awesome. You're a Falcons fan. We've talked about this stuff before.
I've seen it. Yeah, it was not.
It hasn't gone well when he's been the head coach. It has not.
To your point, I don't think Kingsbury is going to be Shanahan, which that was absolutely 1,000% for the Falcons' success under Quinn.
So I'm looking at this defense, and it's also, even if you are buying in that the defense is going to improve a great amount over the course of the season. They traded away their two best edge rushers last season. They did not replace them with guys that you're scared of. So that's awesome. Baker should have time. And then it's game one with an entirely new defense. There are
at home, or actually they're on the road. Tampa's at home.
On the road. So the Washington defense, at least to start the season until they prove me otherwise, that's a defense I'm targeting all the way. Again, it's a lot of guesswork going into a new season. Sometimes guys play better, blah, blah, blah. We go to our old trusty PFF wide receiver corner matchup tool. We've got Mike Evans and Chris Godwin in the top 10.
And you know what?
Mike Evans is the
McMillan better than Godwin or Evans because of his price. He's like 3,300. He's looking
great.
Right.
Speaking of, Washington, McMillan, one of the 3,000-yard receivers in the Ryan Grubb offense last year in Washington. So, you've got an upgrade, all due respect to our guy.
We love our guy. Yeah, I hope he
woke up
probably
an
angry.
upgrade. Yeah. And yeah, now also it's like Trey. If you ever decide to go 4 wide, Trey Palmer's still there.
Exactly.
So,
I like that.
So yeah, I'm with you. I think the Bakers got a prime matchup. Probably the only thing that scares me off is if my gut is right about the defense against Washington. And then it just kind of becomes like, all right, we're up 17 and it's been
Bucky Urban show. Let's go. Be great for a lot of my best balls.
And then Geno, I think kind of a wildly underrated quarterback. Fantasy, probably not. He's just consistent, solid fantasy quarterback. But
he was
to your
QB6 the year before, right? Am I mistaken?
Was he that high?
Let me look it up. Go ahead.
Anyway,
you make your point. I'm gonna look it up. Yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, I think kind of the beauty of it too is because we like to do our stacks. I'm assuming Surtain is mostly going to be on DK.
I'm with you. My stack.
So there goes the most expensive guy. Boom. To me, it's JSN. If I'm doing Geno, it's Geno JSN.
100%. And I actually like playing Walker too because they're really bad versus the run. Like that's basically my double stack because I like running Geno, JSN, and Walker. I mean, you're talking about like $15,000.
And then the thing too is so often you get, again, Cliff Kingsbury, former college
QB8, Joe, but still really good.
Yeah. When you get that college OC or college head coach, usually the college head coach who's like, I'm going to call plays. And you're like, oh, it turns out you weren't made for this in the NFL. So as someone whose team has needed a quarterback, I pay so much attention to what people are saying about the quarterbacks. And so often what I would hear about a bunch of different quarterbacks would be like, this offense is so painful to watch. They're like, there's lack of creativity. They're just spamming plays over and over again because they can get away with it because they have more talent.
Yep.
I never heard anyone talk shit about the Washington offense.
That's
fair.
Was
like, if anything, it was like people were like doubting Penix because they're like, this is actually one of the best offensives in college, and he had the best receiving core and the best O-line. And that's why we're not
All
sure.
Right, come on, Joe. Don't get me depressed. God damn.
So the point is that was so much different than what you heard about when you're like, what are people seeing with Drake Bay? Even what people were seeing with Caleb Williams under a supposed offensive genius head coach. Man. So, I think this offense, at least passing offense, I think is going to open up even more. So, I am definitely a buy low on Geno right now in a matchup where you just avoid your top receiver, which it makes it easier for us in daily. So, I'm with you. Those are the two guys that will be in most of my lineups. Again, if you want to play it super safe, Josh Allen is Josh Allen. So
and Kevin made the point, you can stack them like whether it be with Kincaid, Shakir, everybody's cheap. Yeah, it's reasonable.
Yeah. Which might not be the case down the stretch because maybe
it won't be.
Shoots up. And Kincaid 100% will shoot up.
Oh, yeah. Whoever ends up being the alphas, they'll be $2,000.
Yeah, one of those guys is $6,000 in like a month. So,
yep, completely agree. All right, so the quarterback's pretty easy. Running back's a little bit tougher.
Yes.
So I really am intrigued by two of the top four guys. Bijan, who, like, just looking back at it, the way he finished the season – I didn't realize he didn't have 20 touches until like week 14. No surprise, he had 3 of his 5 high scoring games in those last 5 when, again, he's getting 20 touches. I believe in this Falcons offense. I may be very let down. I'm still concerned about the defense. I believe that Cousins is competent enough. You give him these weapons. I think the offense is going to be very good. I like the play caller. But the guy I keep coming back to, especially if you end up not playing Allen, James Cook might cook versus Arizona, who is a really bad
He definitely
defense.
He definitely could.
The concern is, and this is why I keep like having a hard time pulling the trigger, is not only do we have Josh Allen to contend with, I think Ray Davis would end up, if any of the Bills running backs end up being like the goal line back, that's who it's going to be, and rightfully so. He's a tank. But it's also like Cook is one of those guys that he can have these huge games. We saw earlier in the year, and I think he's going to be really long. Like, I just think people are going to be so scared with Allen's, with everything to where it could be a deal. If he scores 20 plus points and he's like 4 or 5% on, that's huge. And even in the single entries.
Yeah, I generally have the same thought process. Jonathan Taylor, you can understand why he's the highest. He scored 30 in the final game of last year against Houston. But like we said, we're a little worried about, just how much
he doesn't catch passes is what scares me about
right.
Taylor.
With how improved the Houston offense is, or at least we're projecting it to be now that, again, the full complement of receivers. I like the Colts offense. I do too. Again, I think
I love A.D. Mitchell,
top 5 play caller. Yeah. But I don't love the defense. And, you just lay out that cover 3 stuff scares me. So, yeah, to me, Bijan against the Steelers team where, it's also kind of the revenge game, right? It's either Arthur Smith is going to be like, this is me, and look how creative I am. Or it's Bijan being like, this is what happens when you give me the ball like you're supposed to. So I'm with you. I think Bijan, to me, I'm putting him over Taylor. If you're going to spend, huge money at running back, that's the guy I'm going with.
And he catches so many passes. Like, I didn't even realize, down the stretch. The last, 6 games, 8 targets, 4 targets, 10 targets, 3 targets, 7 targets, 5 targets, 6 targets. And the yardage, 100, 11, 50, 54, 26, 32. Those are just free points on DK.
Yeah. So, yeah. Again, even if that game takes some weird turn, Bijan will be fine. Jonathan Taylor will not be.
Yep.
That's why we like Bijan more. James Cook. I know I think we really talked about him a lot down the stretch last year, and it just kind of depends on if that touchdown comes.
Yep.
And
it's got to be a big one, almost definitely, right?
That's the worry.
It's got to be a breakaway.
Yeah, got to be outside the red zone, breakaway, get in there. I do think because of how this team has changed with Stephon Diggs gone, now you're getting the full Joe Brady offense. He's been able to install whatever changes he really wants to make versus taking over the middle of the season.
I think he called it share the wealth and let everybody eat is what he's saying. And that's literally what they're going to do is get the ball.
And he was more committed to the run game.
Yep.
So that's obviously a win for James Cook. So yeah, I think there's, the potential there. If I can find that $800, I'd much rather have Bijan because again, I just feel so much more sure about that. Staying in this kind of general area, I just think Raheem Mostert scored 21 touchdowns last season. And you're in a game with Jacksonville that I think, you want to talk about games that could turn into shootouts. This might be.
Are you with me that Jacksonville's offense is going to be better? I think Jacksonville's offense is going to be scary good because I think Brian Thomas is such a good fit with what they're doing. And to me, it makes so much more sense to have Ingram and Kirk be the guys getting a majority of the targets. And then you have your big play guy in Thomas. And obviously ETN, I was wrong. I didn't think he could handle a full workload. He did. I know he wasn't always the most effective, but the main thing was he was out there and he can make plays. And that's such a big deal. It's just, somebody's going to be there week in and week out.
I don't know if you're the Jags, if you want him to have to be getting 20 plus touches.
You want some Tank Bigsby? Maybe I'll be right 2 years later.
I was going to say, I think we probably missed on Tank Bigsby. But I don't know that that's ideal for them because I do think he wears down a little bit. He's not been super effective in short yardage. I think they actually really tried to steer away from him in short yardage, if I'm remembering correctly, down the stretch because he was not effective. But as far as just fantasy wise, I don't think Tank Bigsby is going to eat huge into it. So, but I am with you. If Brian Thomas hits the ground running, and we've seen more and more receivers do that in recent years, I think that absolutely could happen. I think the Trevor Lawrence isn't good or is mediocre.
It's crazy. It's crazy. He was hurt. He was really hurt last year. He had 1 million injuries.
A lot of drops, a lot of issues with that team that were not really on him.
Yep.
Is he the second coming the way some people talked about him coming out? No,
I was wrong about that. I'll take the L there. Yeah, but he's good. He's definitely good. It's if you're going to give Herbert credit, you got to give Lawrence credit to me. In my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think he's just that half step below Justin Herbert from what we've seen so far. And if anything, that's just because I think Justin Herbert's a little faster, a little stronger arm. He's just got that extra bit of talent.
He also had a better, in my opinion, weapons around him. I know they're hurt a lot, but to still have
his wide receivers
and Williams, yeah.
His offensive line, maybe now because he's got two, elite, potentially elite tackles. If Joe
Harbaugh's going to take advantage of that, I think sure.
But yeah, to me, that game, high shootout potential. Again, that over is 49.5. So that's a monster number. I think there's going to be a lot of points in that one. And Miami, not a
so
team.
So is A-Chain to stay away? Because I know you said Mostert stood out to you. Is A-Chain right now, especially again, we're talking cash. I know in MME, if you want to take a shot.
Yeah, in MME, sure. Always A-Chain.
Right.
Why not?
A guy that was averaging 12 yards per carry, probably not a bad idea. But I'm kind of with you. Let's see it. Right? Let's see what the deal is.
And obviously, their injuries played a part in this. But, Mostert, it's not like he played every single game either. He's one carry short of literally double the carries.
Yeah.
And then 21 touchdowns. And, maybe, down the stretch, maybe Jalen Wright earns a spot onto this. I think
I'm not buying that. Mostert has a connection with McDaniel. Like, I think that
the hype the wheels fall off.
Yeah, unless an injury happens, I don't think so. Like, not this year.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying Jalen Wright won't be good. I just I don't believe that he's going to overtake him unless there's serious injuries.
And then just obviously there's not a 1-to-1, it doesn't map exactly the same looking at season-long ADPs versus what's going to happen early on in DFS. But Raheem Mostert was a guy you could get pretty late for someone who scored 20 fucking touchdowns.
I do that. Every best ball draft I grabbed him, and every draft I had, like if he was there the 10th, 11th round, I scooped him up for sure.
So, to your point where maybe people are scared of James Cook and he's low owned because of the lack of touchdowns last year.
You think
Mostert, despite all the touchdowns, based on everything I've seen, like you said, in best ball and season long drafts,
fair. People are down.
I think people are going to sleeping on Raheem Mostert. So I would especially, even in cash games, I'm betting A-Shane's ownership probably double.
Because it's 6,800. That's what's scary is it's like this guy had like 4 games of 40-plus points. He's 6,800. And that's where I'm like, I keep saying it about him just in general, that it's like by week 9, 10, you're either going to be like, God, I'm an idiot for not taking him when I had the chance, or you're going to be going, God, I'm an idiot for taking him. And I feel like that's the way, week 1 of DFS is too, right? Where if he goes out and scores 30, 40 points, you're going to be kicking yourself. And if he scores 5 and you played him, you'd be kicking yourself. So I think that's a stay away in cash.
Yeah, I'm with you. As much as I like the talent, obviously, because, anyone who can average 7.
You have the need for speed, Joe.
I'm pretty excited. But, yeah, that one I'm a little scared of.
How about Kenneth Walker? That's the guy that I keep circling at again. Denver, most yards per carry in the NFL, 5 yards per carry last year. Simmons is gone, who was a really good tackler in the secondary from the safety position. And again, I think the Seattle offensive line is going to be better. Walker, Metcalf's numbers were down. Walker, all of them, and I think it was the line. I don't think that these guys all of a sudden got like worse because Walker was still second in breakaway run rate and third in juke rate. And it's like, if you do that against a bad defense, you're going to bust a big one. And that's all you really need at 6,100. He breaks one 40, 50-yard touchdown run and you're gravy.
Absolutely. And the other thing too, I know we just talked about Geno because we think he can score a bunch of points in this game because this, outside of Patrick Surtain, again, just not a good defense. I do think there's also an argument, if you think Seattle's just going to kick their ass. And I don't think that's crazy because I think Seattle's pretty good. I think Denver's
they're home. They actually have one of the few home field advantages in the NFL.
Mike McDonald took over that defense. That means that defense is going to be a lot harder to figure out.
With Murphy, too. Like maybe the guy that's going to have the biggest impact of any individual defender in that draft.
You've got a secondary where I think Weatherspoon probably makes that jump and just straight up elite cornerback. Woolen, obviously, his rookie season was especially great. So you've got young DBs, really smart head coach running that defense. And then, so I think there's the chance Seattle's just up this whole game. Maybe they go up early, ideally with, a couple passes to JSN for touchdowns. And then it's just the Kenneth Walker show. And, the only real downside to Kenneth Walker, the biggest downside for him as a running back, doesn't show up as much in fantasy because he doesn't hit the hole all the time.
Yeah.
He dances around. He tries to find that big play.
Allen always talks about that.
If he finds that big play, we don't give a shit because we just want the yards, we want the touchdown.
Yep.
For the head coach, it might piss you off,
and they have a decent backup, right? Like a lot of people believe Charbonnet could end up being something, but I just think from everything I've heard, it's Walker's job. Like it's not like if he has a series, he's not going to be getting the majority.
This is a season-long concern if they get continuously frustrated with Walker not hitting the hole. Week 1 against a bad Denver defense, I like it a lot. Rachaad White is another guy where season-long, I have some concerns. I don't think Bucky Irving's big enough to just steal the role from him. But the days of Rachaad White, 25 touches, I think Bucky Irving's good enough where that probably changes over time. But in favor of either of those guys, again, granted, the defense has changed, so maybe this will switch up. Receptions last year for running backs, 94 given up by the Washington Commanders. That was the 4th worst.
That's why I like Bucky at 4,800 a lot. It's like,
so I think either of those guys becomes interesting plays.
Makes sense.
And again, if you're a special, and I mean Bucky's interesting too because I don't actually know what game plan is better for him. Is it better for him if it's like, Jaden Daniels is awesome, and is Bucky stealing those early 3rd down rolls, or is it better if it's a blowout?
You hear what Bowles said? Like the
Bucky
most frustrating thing ever. He said that we have, basically 2 running backs, and it'll change depending on the day or the week. And it's like
it doesn't shock me,
you asshole.
That's why the league where I kept Rachaad White because I got him at a value in an auction draft. I was like, I got to keep him even though I have a lot of concerns.
Yep.
100% made sure I got Bucky Irving. Well, obviously, the scary thing is maybe that becomes like a 60-40 split and you're not getting what you want in DFS or season long. But in plus matchups, I don't know that it matters. I think both of them are interesting plays this week.
What about Tajay Spears? Because that's the guy I keep coming back to. He's 5,100. I know that Pollard probably is a starter from what we've read. I think, though, it's still going to be very similar to what it was last year. And the big thing for me is I know Pollard's not a bad pass-catching back, but I think that Spears is the better of the two. That's where he get a lot of his damage down the stretch. And the Bears were one of the worst defenses in the NFL last year, defending against running backs, coming out of the backfield, catching passes. And I don't know, man. Like that game, I kind of feel upset. And it's one of those deals where I am starting to actually, if I have a little money left over, instead of just going with Carolina, I kind of like grabbing Tennessee because this is a quarterback making his first start.
That's true.
I don't know what happened to the Titans D last year, but we know historically they've always been pretty good.
They also new defensive coordinator who was the DB coach for the Ravens last year. So again, maybe you're bringing a little more disguise. Maybe that's going to cause problems for Caleb Williams. I do think there's the potential there. My concern, if I'm trying to play up like it's a Titan, I kind of like Spears because I think the Titans are going to lose.
So you think it's pass catching, right?
Yeah, because to me, I think you're dead on. Where if we're winning, we're trying to run the ball 35 times. Obviously, there's benefits to Spears because I don't think they're going to try to run Pollard 25 times. But I think he's going to be the primary back in run situations, and Spears becomes the primary back in pass situations. And again, it's hard to guess with the rookie QBs. I think there is the potential where this Titans defense has a rebound. It's his first start. Problems happen. I'm relatively optimistic because I think Tennessee's going to struggle to get a lot of pressure. I don't think that defense
would be an issue.
Generally, be good at
those
that.
Two receivers, that would be a problem for sure.
And Caleb last year, he had an extreme split on like PFF grade, pressured versus unpressured. The year before, he was pretty good pressured and obviously amazing not pressured.
It's not the worst line ever last year, though. Ever.
So I don't think the Bears offensive line is amazing, but I don't think it's a disaster by any stretch.
They improved it. Like I actually like the moves that they made.
I think it's okay. And then you have that with that receiving core. I'm pretty excited. So, yeah, I think the Bears win this game. I think they score a decent amount of points. And I don't really care when it comes to Tajay Spears because I think that opens him up to get 6 or 7 receptions. So, yeah, I like Tajay Spears either way. I don't like Pollard this week.
All right, 3 more names, and we'll move on to receiver. I'm dying on the Zamir Whitehill. I think this is the perfect matchup. I don't think the Chargers are going to be flinging it with Harbaugh week 1, with Herbert coming off of an injury. McConkey missed a lot of, you know what I mean? Like, I think this is going to kind of be a slugfest, and that plays right into Zamir White, who I know everybody's hating on, that he doesn't force missed tackles. He doesn't do this.
He's just a battering ram.
He runs through people. And if you look at what the Raiders did with him, it's just the engine of their offense. They beat the Chiefs. They went 3-1. They were like plus 55 for those 3 games. Like, to me, that's important. Like, I felt like he gave them an identity, right? Like, and that Raiders defense is good. Like, they can get after the quarterback. I actually like the Pierce hire, so I'm not off of him. But the guy I want to talk to you because he's your boy. You luckily got me into drafting Singletary a lot of places, taking him in best ball. I think he is going to get Barkley level volume. And I know it's not going to be sexy and people aren't going to love it, but I think he's going to get a lot of receptions, just like Barkley did. And he's going to get a lot of touches just in general. Now, whether this Giants offense can consistently move the ball, we'll see. I'm more optimistic with Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson than most people are. But I just think he's a good value. 5,700. I bet he gets 20 to 25 touches in this game.
Yeah, he's another guy where, like, down the stretch, you get into those last 6 weeks, especially if the Giants are, 6-9, 5-10 or whatever. Then, yeah, I think there's a chance that you're going to see a lot more. I mean, maybe Eric Gray. I'm higher on Tyrone Tracy. He was a guy who was a converted wide receiver. Never got a ton of carries. But
where did he play college, Joe?
It was Memphis, right?
Okay, I just didn't know. So he's a receiver. I didn't know he was a receiver.
Well, let me double check. I should make sure I'm getting that right.
We can do some fake news. It's not a big deal, buddy.
Oh no, he was Purdue. So it was Iowa.
Boilermaker figures.
So yeah, so Tracy though converted wide receiver. So again, early in the season, I don't think he's stealing a lot of carries because he's still learning the job basically. Now his metrics, obviously low volume, were like missed tackles, explosive stuff, super high. So I think he's intriguing. Maybe down the stretch, he starts stealing some of these carries.
Right.
Week 1, I mean, yeah, it's going to be Singletary. They trust him. They know what he's going to do. Obviously as a Giants fan, I've been reading up on stuff. There's one guy did like a 3-part thing about how the Giants could surprise everyone this year. And I'm like, I don't really believe that, but great.
Hey man, you got burnt. Like I'm actually one of the people that's in it. I still think Daboll can coach. They just got to get something out of Danny Dimes. Like that's the deal. If he can be anywhere near what he was 2 years ago, I think y'all can be competitive.
Right. I really think it comes down to the line, and that goes for Singletary as well. Yeah. Where if the line has legitimately improved and they added multiple pieces, Evan Neal is not even starting anymore, which hurts my soul as knowing he was a top 10 pick for the Giants 2 years ago.
But everybody agreed that was right. Nobody was saying that was a bad pick, though. It's like one of those deals where it sucks sometimes.
But the fact that he is gone, well, not gone, but now a backup.
Yeah, backup, yeah.
To me, is a good sign. Jermaine Illuminor, who played for the Raiders last year, our offensive line coach, we thank God finally replaced our offensive line coach.
Andrew Thomas is a beast.
We got the Raiders guy. So if that offensive line is solid, I think good things can happen. And then Singletary, one of the things I read is, I think it was John Runyon, was like, that guy just sticks his foot in the ground, one cut, and he goes.
Yep.
And I know where he's going to be.
And
that
he catches
helps
passes.
us so much.
Is the other big thing.
Yeah.
For
and
DK.
Against Minnesota, a pretty solid matchup to me. Again, the defense did get better. It helps when you have a good defensive coordinator, which that was a big change for him last year.
As Philly.
So, going to Brian Flores, that helped a lot. But we're still talking about Sam Darnold.
Yep.
Who knows what's going on. Addison is playing, I believe, right? He didn't get suspended for his 90 mile an hour speeding ticket.
I believe he's not. They are sitting him.
They are sitting him?
I'm going to check that right now, but I'm pretty sure that's what I read.
But yeah, again, Hawkinson.
No, I'm sorry, you're right. Questionable. Okay. He's limited.
But Hawkins still out. Sam Darnold. There's a very good shit. Like is Justin Jefferson going to eat in this game? I'll be very surprised if he doesn't. Is Sam Darnold going to throw a pick in this game? I'll be pretty surprised if he doesn't.
I'm with you.
So yeah, so to me, yeah, I'm with you. I think very good Devin Singletary matchup. Will that be consistent? No, because some games Giants are going to get blown out. Maybe the younger backs push him down the stretch, but they paid him decent money. So I think Singletary, to your point, yeah, 20 touch guy for at least I'd say the first half of the season. So
like
at that price point,
that's what we're looking for. I do like that. That's what we're looking 5,700. I mean, that's what we're looking for. The other one I just wanted to ask you real quick. Still on J.K. Dobbins. I know you did for the first look. 3 weeks later, are you still feeling like, because I mean, he is cheap. I'll give you 4,800. He has or 4,900. He has the ability to bust a big one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Greg Roman offense. It's designed for the run game to be awesome. They now have, again, assuming Joe Alt doesn't pull an Evan Neal, I think Joe Alt will be very good. That gives them, at that point, arguably the best tackle combo in the league if he's as good as that draft point I think he is. So, yeah, I think, the best offensive line by far the Chargers have had in the Herbert era. You've got, I don't know if it's the best offensive coordinator, but the best run game designer that they've had there. So, yeah.
And Harbaugh's a genius. Everywhere he goes, the offense and defense is immediately better. They win. I am not a Raiders. I'm selling Raiders pretty hard. I do think that defensive line, they had Christian Wilkins to Max Crosby. That's going to cause problems for people. But I kind of think that fights off the stagnation, that the regression I would expect from that defense. So the defense will still be okay. I think that offense is going to be pretty terrible, especially if I think they're going to be good. I really do.
I
think they have the right weapons for Gardner. I really do, because you got Zamir, who is we're going to just pound it. You got Bowers,
I think it's 50-50. Devontae Adams gets traded in season.
I agree. I actually think Devontae is being wasted there because they can't throw it down the field. I actually think it makes more sense to have Myers, Bowers,
just go all in, Zamir White pounds it. We're double tight end constantly.
Absolutely.
I think that's reasonable.
Old school football.
So yeah, I like Dobbins, Edwards is arguably the better play in a cash game just because I think he's more likely to score a touchdown. But I think Dobbins higher upside because just if he's remotely back to where he was before all the injuries, he's a dynamic running back.
Oh, I'm with you. We were in love with him 2 years in a row, Joe, and he broke our heart.
And of course, who was his offensive coordinator when he came into the league? It was Greg Roman.
Yep. So I didn't know that.
So yeah, I like that one. I know I was just the other one that I think is interesting is the Bengals backs.
Oh, see,
they're playing New England. Like, New England's defense, don't get me wrong, I think that defense is still going to be solid. But, man, do I think that offense is going to have a tough time. And, Jamar Chase, unless I missed it, I was grading all day today. Unless he signed his contract, I don't even know if Jamar Chase is going to play. So he
was listed as a limited practice Thursday. Back-to-back practice appearances. I'm with you. I don't get it. And then on top of that, Higgins is now questionable, which I saw that and I'm like, are you kidding me? Hamstring was a limited participant. I think he's going to play. I hate now how the NFL does this with all these guys where they're listed as questionable or whatever. And really it's just, obviously I guess there's something there, but they're not really questionable. They're going to play. It's like people talking about Jalen Waddle and all these other people not playing, week one. All these guys are playing. So which one do you like better? You like Moss or Brown?
I think it depends on how you see this game playing out. If you think this is a beat down game, which obviously it's, an 8.5 point spread, I think even more so with the receivers play, it's a beat down game. Then I'd go Chase Brown. I think Chase Brown's probably getting a reasonable number of snaps regardless. Obviously, we don't know week one. We've been surprised before. Everyone thought Trey Sermon was going to be a thing and then, couldn't even see the field. So you don't know until you actually see the splits in actual games, not just preseason games. But I would say my lean, because he's $800 cheaper, and the fact that a blowout probably leads to Chase Brown potentially leading the backfield as opposed to being slightly behind, I would go Chase Brown.
I like it. I just, again, like, to me, if I'm getting in that range of like 5K and below, I like Bucky Irvin. I just think that, there's a lot of ways that game can play out.
More receptions, probably.
Yeah,
so.
and that's what I'm looking at. And, again, 4,800 cash games, people, 3 times is all you're looking for. So I'm talking about if he gets 13.5 points, we are golden. I basically made that $4,500 or $4,800 work. Like that's really, Dave Eddy taught me more than anything last year, that if you can score 150 points in true single entry cash games, most times you're going to cash. Like, you're going to end up making a profit. May not be a big one, and that's what it's all about. All right, wide receivers. I got to admit, I have now said I don't want any of the guys until I get down to Mike Evans. So Lamb, Hill, Jefferson,
I was going to say, if you go
Adams,
below him.
Oh, yeah, there's a ton of guys, and we'll get into those. But I'm saying those.
No, but I was going to say, if you said if you were going to say, I don't want any of the guys, and you were going to go with someone below Mike Evans, then I was going to push back really hard.
Okay.
But yeah.
I love Evans.
Yeah.
Perfect match.
Yeah. Like I said, if you want to put in Justin Jefferson, I'm not fighting you. I've seen the Giants DBs, and both our best safety, Xavier McKinney, is now in Green Bay. So yeah, I think there's a lot of reason to like Justin Jefferson, but we're spending $8,400. Again, I think Jacksonville, Miami, good chance for a shootout. If you want to go Tyreek, CeeDee Lamb, this is probably not my favorite matchup for CeeDee Lamb. And then we don't even know what's going on with Jamar Chase. Like I said, I think the Raiders offense, I don't like it. So yeah, I'm with you all the way. Mike Evans he's probably the guy who's going to be in more of my lineups. Any other wide receiver.
I do really like Tyreek, but I just think Evans for that much cheaper. And I think it's just as likely that Evans has a 30-point game than is Tyreek Hill. Just want to remind people too, last year, their first season, playing together, the first 3 games, 17 catches for 297 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I think there's a very good chance Evans eats. I talked about Nico. He's a lock too. Like, that's basically right now, all my cash lineups, they start with
What did you say he was against cover 3 again?
He was the third in yards per route run. Stroud is first against cover 3. And then again, his stat line, because it's eye-popping. They played Indy week 2. He had 7 catches for $146 and a touchdown on 9 targets. Then they played again, remember, week 18. He had 9 targets, caught 9 passes for 195 yards and a touchdown. I mean, he literally had 300 yards in 2 games. And what's crazy was he only didn't catch. There was only 2 balls he didn't catch. To me, you gotta, again, cash. Like, if you're gonna have to differentiate, if you're really trying to win MME, probably can't put these 2 guys together. But that's 14-3. What are we talking about there? That's not even. Let's see. Sorry, Joe. I'm bad at math. That's 28% of your. So for 28%, I got 2 guys that put up
Evans,
a 60 burger. Like a 60 burger.
Good chance we're going Baker, so we're going cheap at quarterback if we do that.
That's a very good point. Yep.
And again, this is something I brought up, I think, since like week 8 of last season, because I think it was true the entire second half. Washington was just the absolute worst against number 1 wide receivers last year.
Yes, they were.
100 again, according to FTN Fantasy, 100.
According to Joe Matz, you told me every show last year for like the last 6 weeks, and I kept going, you know what? You're right, Joe. I'm going to play a wide receiver versus.
Keep going. 103.8 yards per game to number 1 wide receivers, 14 yards worse than anyone else. Now, again, I think every point you made about Nico is awesome. The Colts were 28th in yards given up to number 1s. But again, that was at 85 yards. So that's 18 yards. Well, 19 yards worse or 19. That's how bad Washington was.
And Washington had pressure at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And by the end of the season going into this year, they don't have very much. At least unless maybe they surprise me. But I find it hard to believe they'll have more pressure than they did.
Like we were saying, our wide receiver corner matchup from PFF, Mike Evans, third best matchup. Nico Collins, fifth best matchup.
Who was 1 and 2? Why you got the list
number 1, unsurprisingly, Justin Jefferson by a decent margin. Number 2 is Puka.
Ooh,
which
I like hearing that. I mean, it's not in the main slate, but I like hearing
right.
That.
It doesn't help us for this, but
I got
something to keep an eye on.
Of leagues. Yeah.
The other guys who were in their excellent advantage matchup category were AJ Brown and Tyreek Hill. So no huge surprises. It's all the best wide receivers for the most part. But yeah, the Washington's outside corners ranked 82nd and 96th. That's the two guys who will be starting presumably on Sunday. Last year on PFF's grading. So yeah, I just all the reasons to love Mike Evans, and yeah, very much with you on Nico. As someone who
and we agree on JSN too, right? So like that could be your 3 receivers for what, like under 20K?
Let's see, because I don't have it in front of me. How much is JSN this?
I'm pretty sure it's 4,900. Let me look real quick.
I was gonna say I thought it was under 5, which
he's 4,900.
is nuts to me.
So
and
yeah,
it's very
19K.
easily too. I mean, we'll go through some guys who are even cheaper, but also Khalil Shakur is a guy who's
5,100. Yeah,
very high on.
And Kevin made a great point, right? That I think he's going to be under-owned because people are leery. We've seen where, to your point, like what you were talking about with Mostert, Shakir's been going crazy late in drafts and in best ball. And I hadn't even thought about it. That's a good, sign that, yeah, you're right. People are just down on them in general, which is a mistake. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Allen had the number 1 QBR rating in the NFL of any quarterback throwing to any wide receiver.
Oh, I just realized I'm in the dark now. Let me get a light on.
Did you see that one dude said a couple of weeks ago that you sounded like you were in a submarine, which made my day? Like, absolutely made my day. I was like, have you been in a submarine, bro? Because I don't know what it sounds like in a submarine, but okay.
He's been watching a lot of Hunt for Red October. So
that's right.
He knows.
You can get the 2 cassette tape. I mean, I'm really like, Terry is also somebody that I'm going to find a way in. Maybe that's the flex in my official cash lineup, but I think it's going to be hard for me to do any better than those 3 wide receivers because again, it's 19-2. It's
pretty good. It's pretty good. It gives us something to work with.
That is 38%. So you still have a whopping 62% of your salary if you want to go expensive QB, if you want to get an expensive running back. And again, if you go McLaurin at flex, you're talking about another guy that's in, under 6K. And then it opens up, whether it be Daniels, Baker, etc. I think we're really on to a cash game lineup. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I interrupted you. I know you were about to say something else about Nico.
Oh, no, I didn't have anything more on Nico.
Okay.
The only thing I would add to, the Bills' point is just, Arizona last year for much of the season was a really awful team. Like they didn't have Kyler Murray. This was not a team outside of that amazing win over the Dallas Cowboys, which we all enjoyed.
That was Dobbs, right?
Yeah. So, this was not a team that was, generally in shootouts. They were usually losing pretty significantly. And they still ended up 18th on DK against wide receivers. So to me, the efficiency that you could have against Arizona is very high. Like overall pass attempts last year, only Carolina, unsurprisingly, faced less. And they finished 18th against wide receivers. So, yeah, I think this is a
remember I told you the PFF
Bills receivers.
PFF gave their defensive front 32nd, their linebackers like 30th, and their secondary like 32nd.
The worst across the board. This is not going to be a good defense.
I'm like, wow, man.
This year, I do fully expect this to be a bad team in constant shootouts. They should be fun. You added Marvin Harrison, a healthy Kyler. Year 2 in this offense.
Boy Dortch.
Better.
Don't forget my boy Dortch.
Our boy Dortch, Michael Wilson, who, depending on the matchup, we're going to throw
That's
into
right,
some lineups.
zone man. Yep.
So, yeah, I think, they're interesting in that regard. But, yeah, when I'm looking for wide receiver, that's just all the more reason now to target wide receivers playing Arizona.
Do you still have the list of number one wide receivers? Because the other guy I feel like I'm sleeping on is DJ Moore at 6,500. Tennessee, it was horrible versus wide receivers. I'm pretty sure they were really bad versus number one wide receivers.
They're 27th in yards.
Yeah.
And then actually, when you break it down by DVOA, so that's factoring in more, like
who they're playing, right?
What your efficiency was, really.
Right.
Like where your yards per attempt, how often you scored touchdowns. They were 31st. So the only team worse on DVOA was our friends in Washington. So, yeah, I think if the only really scary part for DJ Moore is new quarterback, much more competition in that wide receiver room. But as far as matchup goes,
6,500 is cheap too.
The only matchup you definitively would probably say is better is Washington. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of to me, again, if you want to pay up for Tyreek and Justin Jefferson, I'm not going to tell you don't do it.
Right.
But there's enough guys who are in, like you said, Mike Evans below 7,300 or less that I really like. So I'm probably just going to stay in that zone.
Waddle is the other guy that I keep circling. I'm pretty sure, and I forgot who it was that was sharing it, that the defense that Jacksonville run predominantly is actually the one that Waddle has the most success against. And I'm just big on Waddle this year in general. Like, I think he just had an off year. He was a little banged up. I mean, if you look at it, he had, 2 top 10 years, and then he kind of had a drop off. I think he's more of that top 10 guy, especially when Miami, they're so condensed. We know where the ball is going to when they throw. It's going to be Tyreek and Waddle, and it's just like, especially early in the season, if I remember, it was the same deal last year. We started kind of in like that low 6K range, and by like week 4, week 5, he was 7K or more every week because you just realize he's getting the targets and stuff that these number one wide receivers are. So that's potentially a value. What about your boy Neighbors? Where have you landed on him? Because he's 5,900. When I first opened this slate, I was like, oh, I'm playing Neighbors 1,000,000%, and I don't even know if I have him in a lineup right now.
I mean, I think that just comes down to there's probably guys in this range that I just feel a little more sure about, I guess I would say. But again, Minnesota 29th against wide receivers last year. They were not great. I absolutely think the Giants are going to be trying to get the ball in Neighbors' hands as often as possible. I mean, for all the Singletary will do, 80% of what Saquon did, whatever. He's not going to scare people the way that Saquon did. No. And that's Neighbors' job now. Neighbors is the guy who is changing the way defenses play the Giants because, I mean, knock on wood, he doesn't get hurt because things could go south real fast. But, yeah, I do think there's a lot of potential, and I think this is actually a pretty reasonable time to do it because, again, Minnesota, not great against wide receivers last year. Not a killer group of corners there. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's always hard to project receivers right away week 1.
Right.
But, yeah, if I'm rolling the dice on a rookie wide receiver this week, he might be the guy I would be most inclined to go with. Although
my boy is somebody too that I really like. I think that Ladd against a Raiders team that's going to
that's true. Ladd's
I think he's the most likely guy to run those underneath routes, play out of the slot, and if Herbert has to get rid of the ball quickly, I could say again. I'm not saying Ladd's going to have a monster game, but I could see him having like 6-7 receptions for sure.
And then the reason you might throw a Doomsday in there, or probably an even stronger argument for Moore because we know Moore's going to be out there all the time. Tennessee last year, although again changed up their defensive coordinator, so no guarantees it carries over. 31st in DVOA against deep passes last season. And if there's one thing we know about Caleb Williams, That guy loves to hunt the big play. So I think that's, a reason to boost him and every receiver, but probably more in a Dunze than I would say, Keenan Allen, because I just think those are more likely to be the deep play guys in that offense. But yeah, so let's go down in this cheaper range of one guy who I like a lot, not like season long, don't love this week, is Deontay Johnson. I think,
God, me and you are like, I guess out on an island on that. I just look at it, he got 144 targets 3 years in a row, and he had one top 20 season. That's rough because everybody keeps saying he's going to get volume. I'm like, he finished 24th and 38th, getting 104 targets. That's not very good.
I mean, the thing with Deontay Johnson is he will get open. Will he always catch the ball? No, that's kind of an issue. But to me, you look at you watch any part of that Carolina offense last year. And the biggest problem is no one's getting open.
That's fair.
Thielen's the main guy, and, he's a 35-year-old, white possession receiver. He's not getting separation. The other receivers just sucked.
I love Leggett, though. Like, I actually think Leggett's perfect for what Bryce is going to. They're going to use him like Debo, right? Like short passes and just run out.
Right, but Leggett's a guy, too. Now, I think he's probably second half of the season we're hoping.
Right, yeah. No.
Early on.
I'm just saying, overall the season.
This first month, until I see it with Leggett. With Deontay Johnson, he will get open. And because he's the only guy I really trust to get open, I think he's going to get, I know you mentioned he already has seen huge target shares before. I think he's going to see the biggest target share of his life. The problem is New Orleans is a pretty good defense. I think this is a New Orleans team that I think has high potential to just crater down the stretch. But I don't think that's going to happen the first month. I think they'll be competitive. And so, yeah, to me, this is a rock fight. I think there's a reasonable chance Carolina wins the game. But if I'm going with a Carolina guy,
did you pick them on the sheet too?
I did pick them on
our
weekly sheet.
God, we do a confidence pool.
I was like,
that you pick every NFL game 1 to 16 points, and it's unbelievable how many times me and you just
it wasn't a high
picks. We do. Oh, I put one. I think I put like 2 points on it because there's 1 point.
Yeah, I was gonna say not a high confidence sheet.
I put 1 point on. So you mentioned some wide receivers. I do want to talk about a few of the cheap ones because Josh Reynolds to me very intriguing. I think he's going to be the guy in Denver right off the bat, especially these first few weeks. I think he's going to be the guy getting targeted the most. Seattle had their issues last year, and Reynolds was like top 25 in fantasy points per target. Like, that's significant because he wasn't getting any opportunities in Detroit. He is going to get opportunities in Denver. He played so well that Tim Patrick, who a lot of people assume was going to be the number 2 receiver, they cut him. So the other guy I love, and I keep coming back to it, your boy Wan'Dale Robinson. Like, everything I'm reading out of Giants camp is he's getting the most targets. They're going to use him as an extension of the run game and the pass game. And this is PPR. He's 4,100. You need 12.3 points to justify, in the words of Dave Eddy, to get that 3 times number. I think there's a very good chance he does that, especially to your point, down the stretch. The issue last year was he only played 70% or more of the snaps in 6 games. 5 of them came in the last 6 weeks. So they ramped it up at the very end, and it's no surprise. I want to make sure that I have the right number. I'm sorry about that. Those 5 games that he did at the end of the season, 6 targets, 5 receptions, 12.8 point per game on DK. And again, in a cash game contest, when I have a guy 4,100 that I feel pretty safe he's going to get 10 to 12 points. And Wan'Dale has the ability, right? Because he could run it, he could throw it. There's all kinds of stuff he could do. That's just, to me, that's very intriguing in cash, not MME, because his floor is so high.
Yeah, if you're trying to find a cheap like Giants receiver because you're like, I don't know about Neighbors, but I do think, I want someone cheap to target that Minnesota defense. Wan'Dale is the play to me. I know in points per route run against zone, he was more productive than Slayton last year. And yeah, again, last year coming off of an ACL tear. So we didn't really see, like you said, the true Wan'Dale Robinson till the last 4 games of the season. So my expectation, especially, in a zone game, Wan'Dale, and if you're playing cash, Wan'Dale is the play over Slayton for sure. And he's $300 cheaper. So, I think he's definitely one of the better plays once you enter that, once you're under 4,500, you're just kind of guessing almost by, the definition of that's why these guys are that cheap. So I 100% with you on the Wan'Dale play. Speaking of, the rookie wide receivers I mentioned earlier, Jalen Polk interests me at 3,900 because, again, they're playing Cincinnati. I don't think this game is going to be close. Ideal Patriots game is obviously going to be we're running the ball with Stevenson. And
I don't think that's a very good plan, in my opinion.
35
from what
times.
I know about those guys, that's not a good plan, is to just run them a lot. But
I mean, I like Stevenson, but
I do too, but I don't think you want to give him 25 carries a game.
No, and then this O-line is not good.
Real bad.
So that's
why they're not starting Drake. Can we just real quickly?
That is why they're not starting.
What is the coach doing? You're going to publicly say that? That was the dumbest shit I've ever heard. It was like he was trying to walk a tightrope, and instead he said the most asinine thing I've ever heard. How can as a fan?
And it's obviously even more jarring because it's the Patriots. So you're going from Bill Belichick, who would have never remotely said anything like that.
Or on a
Cincinnati. And then, Gerard Mayo, rookie head coach, sometimes things slip. I mean, and to be fair, I don't think he was saying anything that shocked anyone.
No, I'm not saying that, but it's just to say it publicly. What does that mean to Jacoby? What does that mean to the rest of the team, the fans?
Jacoby's the guy I feel bad for all around because, yes, he gets to start, which is, obviously was one of the reasons, probably the reason he signed New England is just hey, I have a chance to start.
Yep.
And you get to start behind, if not the worst offensive line, damn close. And even if you're an optimist on this receiver core, it's not a particularly great receiving core.
Yeah, it's
and your
dark.
coach said that you're worse than the guy behind you.
Yeah.
So,
but we don't want to get him killed. So go out there. Let me real quickly just make
the sacrificial lamb.
Greg Dortch, and then we'll move on to the tight end.
Yes, please. Absolutely.
3,700, and I just he's in my game stack. I'm running. Just so y'all know, if you get a chance to not read the article. I am going to go with Josh Allen, Khalil Shakir, Davis, and Dortch. That is an MME stack. I actually like that game stack a lot. It's only 7% of my salary. It's got a lot of upside. Probably not going to hit, but again, in MME, you want to be different. But Dortch, I don't care if it's MME or cash. Kyler Murray said this back in June. I feel like Dortch is unguardable as far as one-on-one, knowing where to be in the zones. He's got that nuance and savvy to him you want. And a wide receiver. It's not very common. And he's not wrong because remember last year I kept saying when I kept giving him in DFS week after week, if he plays 70% of the snaps, Dortch is going to ball in PPR. And in those 4 games last year, 7 targets, 4.5 receptions, 13.25 points. Obviously, that'd be way over his salary. But if you include the 6 games that he played 70% in 2022, now you're talking about 8 targets per game, 6 receptions, 14.5 points per. And with Zay Jones ruled out, this dude's going to play 70% of the snaps. I would assume that you're going to try to do everything you can to stop Harrison Jr. That's all we've heard is how great this guy is. And I think it's going to leave a lot of Dortch. And I like him this week. And I've been telling everybody, screaming, pick him up if he's out there in your leagues. I think he's a legit wide receiver 3 most of this year, in fantasy.
Yeah, no, I could absolutely see that. And a guy who's done some stuff for us in the past. So
he's won me some money.
When he's been healthy and he's been out there and Kyler's been healthy and been out there, good things have happened. One last guy I want to throw out there.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Jalen McMillan.
Yes,
we touched on him earlier. Down here at 3,300.
Yep.
Washington's per PFF. Washington's top 3 corners combined for 57 explosive plays last year. Individually, they at least each allowed 18.
They gave up
Now
69 20-yard catches or more last year. The Washington defense. I couldn't believe that when I read it.
Each of them individually had one of the 15 highest total amounts of big plays given up.
Oh, this could be a huge Evan McMillan game. I might do a double stack in an MME with Baker and them too.
So, yeah, if you decided even that you're like, I'm not going to go Mike Evans. I I want Nico in there. I want Jason, whatever, blah, blah, blah. If you do if you roll the dice on the Baker Mayfield McMillan stack and that thing,
did you say it's 3,300, right?
3,300.
Yeah.
Next to LaVisca Chenault.
Why is he less than Tucker? I mean, not Tucker, but why am I not forgetting his name?
Trey Palmer.
Yeah, Palmer. I don't understand that.
I think, there's no guarantee on how everything will stack up.
That's not what Twitter's telling me, Joe. Everybody's telling me on Twitter. But
that's not what I'm hearing either. But, again, people can be wrong. And, Trey Palmer is someone who, he's been in the NFL. We've seen
he might wake up angry. And,
he might wake up angry. But, I would play McMillan, who's
I'm glad you brought that back up. Because I know I mentioned him earlier, but I did that's another one that Kevin was actually the first person to bring it up. And I was like, oh, I like that. And I didn't even realize about the him playing at Washington. I forgot about that. All right, tight ends, because of course, me and you've gone an hour and 10 minutes. Again, I like Kincaid. Now, McBride, you can talk me into. Milano's not.
You can talk me into both. You can talk me into.
You can, but to me, Buffalo's even more because or McBride is. Milano's not playing. I tweeted out the stat the other day when Milano's in the game and playing linebacker, middle of the field. They didn't give up a touchdown all season. The QBR and everything was very low. When he was out, it was 7 touchdowns, no interceptions. Completion percentage goes up, everything across the board. So that's not good when you're McBride. It's also good for Dortch again, too. Who likes to go over the middle as well. But for me, it's just, again, Ingram at 5,500. I just can't pass that up. I keep telling people he caught the 4th most passes in the NFL last year. He had the 12th most targets. And they lost Calvin Ridley, who got a shitload of targets. Yeah. And what I'm most excited about him was down the stretch. Like, I know this probably pains you, but he figured something out. Like, he truly did, because he had a good season. But what's the issue, right? He just doesn't score touchdowns ever anymore. He scored 4 touchdowns in the last 6 games. And I think that's really big because he's going to get red zone targets. What's his name? What's the other guy's name for Jacksonville that left? Why am I blanking on it now? Ridley and Jones. They accounted for almost 70% of Lawrence's red zone targets. So no matter what, Kirk and Ingram are going to get some more red zone targets. Like they just are. There's no way Brian Thomas is going to get all of those. So I think that's really good. And again, this is a guy that let's just go the last 5 weeks. 9 catches, 11 catches, 4 catches, 10 catches, 6 catches. The targets in those games, 9, 12, 6, 15, 6. Target monster, we think Miami's going to score. To me, Ingram's almost like a slam start in cash.
Yeah, I'm hard-pressed to argue against that. And even with all my built-up Giants angst with anything Evan Ingram, yeah, I mean, it's a plus matchup in a game where I expect the other team to score, high 20s, low 30s amount of points. So you're going to have a pretty pass-oriented game plan. And yeah, the guy that has the highest upside in this offense is Brian Thomas. It's his first game ever in the NFL. So I'm with you 100%. One interesting one, and I would be hard-pressed to not just spend the money, $100 on Evan Ingram. Jake Ferguson's an interesting, counterintuitive pick.
Yeah, with CD missing. Yeah. So
you got Cleveland, obviously, awesome defense when they're not playing the Texans. 3rd against tight ends last year. There's a lot to worry about. Jake Ferguson averaged 0.32 more yards per route run against man defense last season. So it's not usually what you see with tight ends. It's usually they find the empty spots in the zone.
The Travis Kelce, right? Like they just they almost on the fly running routes.
If you remember Jason Witten, productive till the very end because he knew where to go in zones. Ferguson's better against man, or at least he was last season. 4th highest rate of man last season, the Cleveland Browns. So I do think there's some counterintuitive stuff where you're like, maybe that could work. But I would just feel better sticking with Evan Ingram. So that's more of like if you're going into the larger fields and you're like, if this hits, nobody's going to be on it. That could be something. Cash games, though, 100%. Just spend $100. Go with Evan Ingram.
So the two other guys, if you want to get a little cheaper, we got Noah Fant, who we're both, I know, pretty high on him this year. Seattle's finally got rid of all the million tight ends that they got. He's got a little bit of injury, which is a concern, but Denver dead last on DK versus tight ends last year. And the guy that I keep coming back to, Hunter Henry, 4,200, since he was awful versus tight ends. You brought up, you think that New England's going to be getting smoked, which is probably, a pretty good chance, especially if Chase plays. And that's going to be really good for Henry. It's also why I wonder, am I sleeping on like Stevenson, right? Like, because if he ends up catching 8-9 passes because they're down, his price is not that hard to swallow either. But I think Henry's really enticing.
Yeah, I'm with you on Hunter Henry because, Henry, we've seen him have the big games. He closed out his last 2 games he played last season because he didn't finish the season.
Yeah, of course.
2 back-to-back 19-point games. And he opened up the season with 2 very strong games. Like you said, a prime matchup against the Cincinnati defense. A game where, probably most New England games are going to have to be pass-oriented. But, yeah, I definitely think if you're just throwing a dart, the guy who scored 6 touchdowns last year with, say whatever you want about how Drake May outplayed Brissett. Jacoby Brissett's better than anyone who was.
Yeah, Brissett's he's a very competent QB for sure.
Like, to me, a lot of that is, and especially personally where I was coming from in draft season, I think Drake May is good. To me, he was my clear number 2. Obviously, that's a hotly contested.
Well, I think people get confused with fantasy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's where people get confused with fantasy. I really do. So I don't think anybody's saying Daniels is a better prospect than May. May's bigger.
I think a decent number of people were saying Daniels is a better prospect.
I believe
I disagree with
May's younger.
Pretty strongly,
you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of, again, if we're being like, yeah, he's a better athlete. It doesn't make him a better prospect. You know what I mean?
Obviously, Washington thought that Jaden Daniels is better.
Well, that's not a win in Daniels' column because Washington, they're going to Washington.
They got a new group in there. Maybe they're smarter. We'll see.
Zach Ertz, by the way, I think we're here. 3,600. Bucks allowed the 3rd most reception, 3rd most receiving yards, and 6th most touchdowns to tight ends. Absolutely. Last season, 7 different tight ends caught 5 or more passes in a game versus Tampa. And with Washington starting a rookie QB and an offensive line that, if we're being honest, last year was not great. They can give up a lot of sacks and pressures. It could be very likely Ertz ends up being Daniel's security blanket, at least to start the season in the passing game. And this is a big one. Despite only playing 7 games last season, Ertz was 10th in target share and 6th in target rate among tight ends. I looked it up. He's played 25 games for Kingsbury and Arizona the last 3 years. He is averaging 6.5 targets per game in those 25 games. He's averaged at least 6 targets each season that he's been in Arizona. That's insane. And he's 3,200. We think they're going to be down. That defense is awful. Like, I'm actually considering playing Ertz over Ingram because it frees up so much money.
That's true. The other true dart throw would be going Ben Sinnott from Washington as well.
Can we trust Kingsbury, though, to do it, right? Because didn't he do this with McBride last year for at least a few weeks?
Well, and Kingsbury always loved, no one loved a 4-wide set more than Kingsbury. But then, they just traded away Dotson.
That's fair.
And they invested, I think it was a 2nd-round pick.
They did get Noah Brown, though, which is kind of intriguing, right? Like a good landing spot for Noah Brown, who wanted some money in DFS.
Opportunity for sure. Yeah. So, but that's, Sinnott's probably like
how much is he?
I filled out my lineup and I only have $2,800 left. Then that's probably when you're throwing him in there.
2,700, that is enticing.
2,700, yeah.
MME, that is nice. The other guy, we brought it up last week, Munt, or Rich did. By the way, I meant to tell you because you weren't on the, obviously the waiver wire show. Kevin's got the nerve to talk about how Munt's a good play this week. And I go, wait a minute, you shit on my Munt take 2 weeks ago, and now you're gonna, Munt's gonna be a good play? Like, screw you, Kevin.
You won him over. You won him over. That's
I guess, but he didn't give me credit for it. He was giving Rich credit for it. So that just, made me even more upset.
Well, that's fair. That is upsetting.
But Dolchich, again, for Denver. I mean, who are they going to throw it to? He's 3,000.
That's fair.
And Seattle wasn't great. Seattle, correct me if I'm wrong, they're one of those teams, they don't give up a lot of passes or receptions, but they give up a ton of touchdowns, if I remember. And they've done that, I thought, the last couple of years. Maybe I'm thinking of Arizona. But
they did improve last season because I remember before they were in that Arizona thing where it was just like, this is the worst.
The whole West, the whole West basically.
I do know that I picked against them a few times, and I know at least one of those times hit big. But if I am remembering correctly, I'm trying to pull it up right now, but they were not the atrocious defense that they had been previously against tight ends. Let's see. Yeah, they were pretty middle of the like
18th
yardage.
On DK, so they must have gave up some receptions, I guess.
So they were 26th in yards. So they were bad yardage wise.
Okay,
but they were like, in that 18 to I think that 15 to 20 range around there. It looks like for receptions and touchdowns.
I wonder how many big games.
They only gave up 5 touchdowns, so that was key.
You hear all that yardage and not a lot of receptions. The defense, real quick, then we'll get out of here. You still on Carolina? Is that still kind of the team?
I mean, considering we both picked them to win, I think we're obviously
that's fair.
Because I'm not picking them to win because I think they're going to win 31-27.
Well, yeah,
so
for sure. I think that's going to be a slugfest in general. I mean, It would be one of those weeks that if I could spend up, if I just had all this extra money, New Orleans would probably be the defense that I would want, to be honest.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, though. If you're us and you're like, I think this is an upset, there's a $1,300 gap between.
Oh, no. I mean, we've talked about this, and I want to make sure we stress this. We always, like 99% of the time, we're going to look at the 4 cheapest defenses, and you just pick one because it's so random. Like it is. I've been burned so many times. I can't tell you how many times I've taken the best defense in the league versus me starting at quarterback behind a bad offensive line, and they'll get torched. I mean, it's the way it works. Or somebody that was 2,600 will have 2 pick sixes and they outscore them anyway. So, anyway, so this has been fun. We will, again, Friday, if you want to hang out with us on Fantasy and Frames, we'll be doing a little MME. But you got anything you want to plug, Joe, before we get out of here? Other than, I guess I got to start watching Industry because you plugged it earlier. Yeah, watch Industry. Industry is awesome. And Jon Snow in that too, or am I mistaken? He is this season, so you get Jon Snow in there. Wow. I'm gonna just plug some TV shows as a TV guy. Hell yeah, let's do it. If you have Apple Plus and you've never watched Slow Horses, get on the Slow Horses train. Season 4 just started. I started it, Joe. It's very good. I got all spare time. 6 episode seasons. Yeah, it's awesome. If you love spy drama with some humor, fantastic. And then just dropped on FX, which then shows up the next day on Hulu. English Teacher. Yes. As someone who works in schools, I love my Abbott Elementary, but I also want something a little more. Abbott's reasonably real, I think, but it's also elementary school. Kids, you're right. Yeah. I've worked in middle schools and high schools. This is much more like in the vein of, I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily say my experience, but when the dude says transvestite and he's like, we can't say that anymore. He's like, why? And a show which is rare among comedies, hitting the ground at a sprint. Oh, that's awesome. By episode 2, it's figured itself out. Last thing I want to plug, Tanaroa McMillan, Arizona Wildcats, the best wide receiver in college football. Kept your quarterback. Like, I'm happy for you, bro. Like, we have played 1 game in the Big 12. And Tanaroa McMillan is now second all time in receiving yards in a single game. Is that true? Wow. And if the game had been a little bit closer, he only needed like 15 more yards for number 1. So what is the tough games on your schedule?
So 2 weeks. So this week we've got NAU up north. We're playing the other non D1 school.
Right. Yeah.
They
Everybody does it.
although,
I'm not,
to
I'm just
be
curious
fair,
who y'all got like in the Big 12.
they beat us like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was like the low point. And now last year we're number 11. We're shooting back up. So that's not big. But the week after that, we have the bizarre. We play Kansas State, who is ranked, another Big 12 school. We scheduled it before we moved to the Big 12. It is a non-conference game.
Ooh.
So it's two top 20 teams, assuming neither of us blows our game this week, in a non-conference.
So why did they let them do it and Georgia, Texas was not allowed to do it? Isn't that weird?
I don't know. Maybe just because people give a shit more about you guys.
That's
and then we get a bye. Week after that, it's Utah. So
is that home or away?
I believe that's definitely on the road with Utah because we had them home last year.
Because they're really good.
I believe both of those games I think are like 12th or 13th. Yeah, they have Cam Rising, the oldest starting quarterback in college football.
He's giving Bo Nix a run for his money.
Exactly. So 2 biggest games of the year, potentially the next 3 weeks or next 4 weeks because we have that bye. But yeah, so those are the times to tune in, see what T-Mac and Fafita can do against elite competition.
Oh, I think they're going to be very good. Amazingly, you need players to win, even at the highest level. So I don't really have anything to plug other than just check out Fantasy Six Pack. Ton of good stuff on there.
So much.
Join the Discord. I'll admit, and I apologize because it's kind of an asshole thing for me to say, but even though I was supposed to be contributing to the Discord, I never checked it. I am now checking it. I am now contributing to the Discord. If you want to ask me any questions about DFS, fantasy, if you want to ask me what TV shows to watch, what kind of Yorkie to get, you name it. You can ask it to me. But it's great, man. It really is. Like the interactions and just the camaraderie and just a lot of smart people in there talking sports, which, come on, at the end of the day, that's what we all want to do. So
absolutely.
Should definitely check that out. Be sure to subscribe to the Fantasy Six Pack YouTube channel. If you're not, be sure to follow Fantasy Six Pack TikTok page. And that will be the one thing I will plug is follow me on Twitter at Keith Flemming. Follow me on TikTok at Keith Flemming DFS. Make sure I change my Twitter handle too. But excited to be doing year 5, Joe, with my brother from another mother. And don't worry, by week 4 or 5, we will both be depressed as the Giants and Falcons have broke our hearts. Because that's what they do.
I have hope for you to get your heart broken in the playoffs this year.
There you go. It's like the Cowboys. We gotta build it up a little bit.
Right. If you have a Cowboy season, that'd be amazing, right? That would be ideal.
Right now, it's been 6 years, so I would take it.
Yeah.
Like, seriously. So but
I would be thrilled with the Cowboy season.
Yeah. So we will see you guys soon. And again, check out all of our stuff.